"Get your filthy hands off that door." The shout cracked through the Ridgemont precinct lobby hard enough to stop every conversation inside. A black woman in a charcoal coat stood frozen near the front entrance, one hand still resting against the glass security door she had just opened. Rainwater dripped quietly from the edge of her sleeve onto the tiled floor. Officer Brenda Holloway stormed across the lobby fast, badge swinging against her chest. "You deaf too?" she snapped. "I said back away from the entrance." The woman lowered her hands slowly. "Calm. Controlled. Officer, I am only trying to enter the building." "Then try somewhere else." Brenda looked her up and down with open disgust. "You smell like you slept in a bus station." Several civilians waiting near the report desk turned immediately toward the scene. A teenage boy stopped filling out paperwork. An elderly woman clutched her purse tighter. Behind the bulletproof intake window, a desk clerk quietly lowered his eyes and pretended to organize files instead of intervening. The woman near the door tightened her grip slightly around an old leather briefcase hanging at her side. Worn corners. Faded stitching. Cheap looking. Brenda smirked the moment she noticed it. "What is in the bag?" "Personal documents." "Sure." Brenda laughed once. "Sharp. Mean. Probably stolen." A second officer leaned casually against the coffee station nearby watching everything unfold with amusement already forming across his face. Officer Craig Dawson. Thick shoulders. Relaxed grin. The kind of cop who enjoyed seeing somebody else humiliated first thing in the morning. "Brenda," he called lazily, "maybe she is here looking for the shelter." Quiet laughter came from somewhere near the back hallway. The woman ignored it. "Officer," she said calmly, "I have every legal right to enter this station." Brenda stepped closer immediately. Too close. "Rights?" Her voice rose loud enough to echo off the lobby walls. "You think trash walks in here talking about rights?" Silence spread fast now. Phones slowly lifted. People started recording. The woman's expression did not change, but one of her fingers tightened around the briefcase handle hard enough for her knuckles to pale. Brenda noticed the movement and mistook restraint for weakness. "Look at me when I am talking to you." The woman met her eyes quietly. "I am." Something about the answer irritated Brenda even more. No fear. No begging. No apology. Just calm. And sometimes calm makes cruel people angrier than insults ever could. "You people always act entitled," Brenda muttered. "Walk in here dirty, demanding attention." Craig chuckled behind her. "Maybe she thinks this is social services." A young patrol rookie standing near the hallway shifted awkwardly. "Officer Holloway," he started carefully. Tiny hope. Tiny interruption. Brenda cut him off instantly without turning around. "Unless you want traffic duty for 6 months, stay out of this." The rookie went silent immediately. The woman near the door finally spoke again. "You have not asked for identification." Brenda barked a laugh. "I do not need ID to recognize trouble." Then she pointed toward the exit. "Get out before I drag you out myself." The woman exhaled slowly through her nose. Rain tapped softly against the precinct windows behind her. "Officer," she said quietly, "you are making a serious mistake." Craig pushed off the coffee station now, grinning wider. "Hear that? We got ourselves a lawyer." Brenda stepped forward so fast the civilians near the intake desk flinched. "The only mistake here," her hand flashed across the woman's face with a sharp crack that echoed through the lobby, "is you walking in like you belong here." Nobody moved afterward. Not the civilians. Not the rookie officer. Not even the clerk behind the glass. The woman staggered half a step sideways from the force, her briefcase slipping from her hand and hitting the floor hard enough to pop one latch loose. A faint red light blinked once from inside before the lid snapped shut again. Craig noticed it first. His grin faded for half a second. What the hell is? Brenda kicked the briefcase back toward the woman before he could finish. Pick up your garbage. The woman touched her cheek slowly. A red mark already forming beneath her dark skin. Her breathing remained steady. But her eyes changed now. Not fear. Not panic. Something colder. She bent carefully, picked up the briefcase, and closed the loose latch with practiced precision. Then she glanced once toward the security camera mounted above the intake desk. Long enough for the rookie officer to notice. You recording this? Craig mocked. What are you gonna do? File a complaint? The woman looked back at him calmly. Maybe. Brenda stepped closer again. You think anybody here is going to believe you over us? Around them, the crowd had already decided who looked powerful and who did not. Uniforms. Badges. Radios. Authority. Against one black woman in a rain-soaked coat holding an old briefcase. How many people lose their dignity simply because nobody important appears to be watching? The woman adjusted the strap of her briefcase slowly. What is your badge number? Brenda laughed directly in her face. You planning to report me? I asked for your badge number. Craig smirked. She memorizing procedure now. But the rookie officer near the hallway stopped shifting nervously and stared harder at the woman instead. Because civilians usually cried by now. Or shouted. Or threatened lawsuits. This woman spoke like somebody used to command rooms much larger than this one. Brenda saw the rookie watching and grew even crueler. Get her out. Craig moved toward the front door and shoved it open aggressively. Cold rain blew into the lobby instantly. You heard the officer. Brenda pointed outside. Back to the street. The woman stood still for one long second while dozens of eyes stayed fixed on her. Then she picked up her briefcase fully, straightened her coat sleeve, and walked toward the exit without another word. No screaming. No threats. Just silence heavy enough to make the rookie officer deeply uncomfortable. As she reached the doorway, her briefcase shifted slightly again. Another faint red blink glowed through the cracked latch. This time the rookie saw it clearly. Recorder light. Before he could say anything, Brenda slammed the door shut behind the woman hard enough to rattle the glass. Trash belongs outside, she muttered. Craig laughed again. But from deeper inside the precinct, a phone suddenly started ringing non-stop in Captain Bryce Mercer's office. And 30 seconds later, the captain's door burst open. The sound of the slap stayed with Naomi Sullivan long after the precinct door slammed behind her. Not the pain. The silence afterward. The civilians looking away. The rookie officer freezing instead of speaking. The quiet laughter from Officer Dawson near the coffee station. Rain soaked through the shoulders of her charcoal coat as she crossed the empty parking lot without looking back. Her cheek burned red beneath the cold afternoon wind, but her grip on the old leather briefcase never loosened once. Inside the precinct lobby, Captain Bryce Mercer's office phone was still ringing non-stop. She heard muffled shouting through the glass before the door closed behind her completely. Then the city noise swallowed everything else. Sirens somewhere downtown. Tires hissing through wet streets. A train rattling above the tracks 2 blocks away. Naomi stopped beside a faded black sedan parked near the curb and rested one hand against the roof for just a second. Tiny tremor. Tiny crack in the armor. Then it disappeared. She opened the passenger door carefully and placed the briefcase on the seat beside her like it contained something fragile. Maybe it did. A small red light blinked softly through the half-broken latch again. Recorder still running. She reached over and turned it off without looking at it. The silence afterward felt heavier. 20 minutes later she sat alone inside a small motel room on the edge of Ridgemont. Cheap floral curtains. Flickering bathroom light. heating unit rattling like it might die any second. Her dinner sat untouched beside the bed. Instant soup. Crackers. A paper cup of coffee gone cold. Mayami stood quietly near the sink pressing a wet towel against the mark on her cheek. She did not cry. Did not curse. Did not replay the humiliation out loud. But her eyes stayed fixed on her own reflection longer than normal. As if asking herself one dangerous question. Was the system really this broken already? On the small table beside the bed sat a framed photograph worn soft at the corners. A younger black police officer smiling proudly beside a patrol car 30 years earlier. Harold Sullivan. Her father. Beneath the frame rested an old commendation medal and a folded newspaper clipping with half the headline visible. Whistleblower officer found dead after internal. Mayami turned the article face down before reading the rest. She already knew every word on that page anyway. Her phone buzzed suddenly across the table. Unknown number. She let it ring twice before answering. Sullivan. Silence first. Then a cautious male voice. "Ma'am, this is Officer Tyler Grant. The rookie from the lobby." Mayami sat slowly on the edge of the bed. "You called from a private number. I did not want dispatch tracking it." His breathing sounded nervous. "Listen. I should have said something earlier. But you did not." Silence again. Heavy. "Guilty. Officer Holloway runs that station," Tyler admitted quietly. "People stay quiet because fighting her destroys careers." Mayami's eyes drifted toward the old photo of her father. "I know." Tyler lowered his voice further. "Captain Mercer got a call right after you left. Everybody started panicking upstairs. Tiny clue. Tiny shift. Panicking about what? I do not know exactly. But I heard city council mentioned." Before Mayami could answer, another voice suddenly exploded in the background on Tyler's end. "Brenda Holloway." Loud. Angry. "Who are you talking to?" Tyler's breathing hitched instantly. "I have to go." The line disconnected. Mayami stared at the silent phone for several seconds before lowering it slowly. Outside the motel window, rain continued sliding down neon signs and cracked sidewalks while police sirens echoed faintly across the city. She opened the leather briefcase at last. Inside sat a folded appointment packet sealed with the Ridgemont city crest. Beneath it rested the small recorder still holding every word from the precinct lobby. "Sewer rat. Trash. You people." Her hand hovered over the recorder for a moment before moving instead toward something underneath it. A polished silver badge wrapped carefully inside cloth. Hidden. Unused. She did not unwrap it completely. Just enough for the edge of polished metal to catch the motel light before she covered it again. "Have you ever been judged before anyone knew your story?" A soft knock interrupted the room suddenly. Mayami stiffened immediately. Another knock followed. Slower this time. Careful. She crossed the room silently and opened the door halfway. An elderly motel housekeeper stood outside holding a small white envelope. "Front desk said this was delivered for you." "Who brought it?" "Police courier." The woman hesitated after noticing the red mark still visible on Mayami's cheek. "You okay, honey?" Mayami forced a small nod. "Thank you." The housekeeper squeezed her hand gently before leaving. Tiny kindness. Tiny human moment. Then Mayami looked down at the envelope. Ridgemont Police Department, urgent internal notice. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She opened it slowly. Inside was a printed order demanding she appear at the precinct first thing the next morning regarding possible interference with law enforcement operations. At the bottom sat Brenda Holloway's signature. But beneath the signature, barely visible near the page corner, another line had been stamped afterward in red ink. Hold for Captain Review. Mayami stared at the stamp for a long moment. Because somebody inside that building had stopped the order from fully processing. And somewhere inside the Ridgemont precinct, somebody else had finally started asking questions. By sunrise, Ridgemont had already chosen a version of the story. A short video from the precinct lobby moved through phones before coffee finished brewing. It did not show Brenda Holloway stepping into Mayami Sullivan's space first. It did not show Craig Dawson laughing. It did not show the briefcase hitting the floor or the red recorder light blinking inside. It started after the slap, with Mayami standing in the rain-soaked doorway, silent, one hand against her cheek. The caption said, "Unstable woman causes scene at police station." By 8:10 a.m., half the precinct had seen it. By 8:30, officers were joking about it in the break room. She looked crazy, Craig said, stirring sugar into burnt coffee. Walked in like she owned the building. Brenda leaned against the counter, arms crossed, enjoying every second. People like that smell weakness. If you let them talk about rights, next thing you know they are filing complaints. A young records clerk named Denise Whitaker stood near the copy machine with a stack of intake forms pressed against her chest. She had been behind the glass the day before. She had heard Mayami ask for a badge number. She had heard the exact wording. Not angry. Not confused. Precise. She asked for identification procedure, Denise said quietly. The room went still. Brenda turned her head slowly. What did you say? Denise swallowed. Nothing. I just mean, she did not sound intoxicated. Craig smiled without warmth. Denise, you work paper. We work streets. Brenda stepped closer. And paper people should stay behind glass. Denise lowered her eyes. The stack of forms trembled slightly in her hands. That was how Ridgemont worked. Not with one bad officer. With dozens of small silences. Across town, Mayami sat in her sedan outside the motel, watching rain slide down the windshield. The urgent notice lay open on the passenger seat. Beside it sat her father's old photograph and the leather briefcase. She had changed into a clean blouse beneath the same charcoal coat. The red mark on her cheek had darkened overnight. She looked at it once in the rearview mirror, then looked away. Her phone buzzed again. Tyler Grant. No words this time. Just a photo sent from inside the precinct hallway. A bulletin board. A printed copy of Brenda's report pinned beneath a magnet. Trespasser claimed false rights. Possible recording device. Mayami's eyes narrowed at the final line. Brenda had noticed enough to be afraid. Not enough to understand. Another message arrived seconds later. Tyler, she is telling everyone you tried to bait her. Mayami typed only 3 words. Do not interfere. Then she placed the phone face down. Protecting witnesses mattered more than proving herself quickly. Her father had taught her that. Truth forced out too soon could get buried before it reached daylight. Back inside the precinct, Captain Bryce Mercer stood behind his desk staring at 3 missed calls from City Council President Halden Price. Sweat shone along his temples despite the cold air pumping from the vent above him. On his desk sat Brenda's incident report. Beside it, a sealed folder with the city crest. He had not opened it yet. He kept looking at the name printed across the delivery label. M. Sullivan. His hand hovered over the folder twice. Twice he pulled back. Then Brenda knocked once and entered without waiting. Captain, she is coming back, Brenda said. Good, Bryce said, too quickly. Brenda studied him. You nervous? I am annoyed. Then let me process the trespass warning publicly. Officers need to see we are not letting outsiders push us around. Bryce looked up sharply. Do not touch her again. Brenda's face hardened. She filed something. I said do not touch her again. For the first time, Craig's grin faded when Brenda told him later. Why would Bryce care, he asked. Brenda glanced toward the captain's office window. Because he is weak. But her eyes moved to the evidence locker door at the end of the hall. She had ordered Tyler to check whether the woman carried a recorder. Tyler had not answered. That bothered her. At 9:02 a.m. Miami walked back through the front entrance of Ridgemont Precinct. The same lobby. Same badge wall. Same fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Conversations died faster this time. Civilians looked up from plastic chairs. Officers turned from the intake desk. Someone whispered, "That is her." Another phone lifted. Miami held the urgent notice in one hand and the briefcase in the other. Denise saw her first and froze behind the glass. Their eyes met for half a second. Denise's lips parted like she wanted to say something. Then Brenda's voice cut across the lobby. "Well, look who came crawling back." Craig stepped beside her, arms folded. "You brought your little bag again." Miami stopped in the center of the lobby. Calm. Upright. "I am here because your department ordered me to appear." Brenda smiled. "No. You are here because now we handle this on record." Miami glanced once toward the ceiling camera above the intake desk. Then toward the corner behind the flagpole where no camera covered the floor. Brenda noticed the look and stepped into that exact blind spot. "Smart eyes," Brenda said softly. Still the wrong building. Captain Bryce's office door opened behind them. He stepped out holding the sealed city folder at his side, face pale, voice tight. "Bring her to the front desk," he said. Brenda smiled like she had won. But as Miami walked forward, the loose latch of her briefcase clicked open just enough for the red recorder light to blink once in full view of Denise behind the glass. Denise saw it. Tyler saw it. And this time, Captain Bryce saw it too. The red recorder light blinked once through the loose latch of Miami Sullivan's briefcase. Tiny. Brief. But Captain Bryce Mercer saw it clearly from across the lobby. His face tightened instantly. Brenda Holloway noticed the change before she noticed the light itself. "Captain?" she asked. Bryce stepped down from the hallway slowly, still holding the sealed city folder against his side like it weighed more than paper should. "Bring her to intake," he said quietly. "Now." Brenda smirked toward Miami. "Hear that? You finally made yourself important." Craig Dawson moved beside the report counter, arms crossed again. "Maybe she wants another complaint form." A few officers laughed under their breath. The civilians waiting in plastic chairs stayed silent, watching the scene the same way people watch storms through windows. Nobody wanted to get involved. Miami walked calmly toward the intake desk without waiting for security to touch her. The rookie officer, Tyler Grant, noticed that too. Most civilians fought by now. Or begged. This woman walked like she already understood the building better than half the officers inside it. Brenda slid a blank incident report across the cold granite counter. Name: Miami Sullivan. Brenda wrote slowly, exaggerating every letter. Address. Miami gave the motel address. Craig laughed softly. Classy. Brenda looked up again. Occupation. Tiny pause. Not fear. Choice. Public service. Brenda rolled her eyes immediately. That could mean janitor. Janitors are public servants too, Miami answered calmly. Silence hit harder than the insult would have. Denise Whitaker behind the glass looked down quickly to hide the reaction on her face. Brenda's jaw tightened. You think you are smart? No, Miami kept her eyes steady. I think procedure matters. Another tiny shift moved through the lobby. Officers noticed it this time. Procedure. Not normal civilian language. Captain Bryce noticed too. His grip tightened harder around the sealed folder. Brenda leaned forward over the counter. You want procedure? She tapped the paper aggressively. Fine. Sign the statement admitting you caused disruption inside an active police facility. Mayami looked at the form once. This incident report is invalid. Craig snorted loudly. Here we go. Brenda crossed her arms. And why is that? Mayami pointed quietly toward the top corner of the form. No witness designation. No initiating code. No bodycam reference number. Silence. Real silence this time. Tyler's eyes widened immediately. Denise stopped typing. Even Craig's grin flickered for half a second. Brenda recovered fast. You watched too many cop shows. No, Mayami said softly. You skipped intake procedure. Sharp silence again. Captain Bryce slowly looked down toward the report form in Brenda's hands. Because she had skipped it. Everyone trained in Ridgemont procedure knew that instantly. Brenda saw the hesitation spreading and slammed the clipboard down harder. You think technicalities save you? Mayami did not answer immediately. Her eyes drifted once toward the security camera above the entrance. Then toward the hallway camera outside holding. Camera 3 is offline, she said quietly. Tyler looked up fast. What? It has been offline since yesterday evening. Brenda barked a laugh. Now she is an IT expert too. But Tyler had already glanced toward the monitor station reflexively. Because camera 3 had gone dark during second shift. Only staff inside the precinct knew that. Denise looked between Mayami and the dead monitor feed with growing confusion. Craig stepped closer now, less relaxed than before. How would you know that? Mayami's fingers rested lightly on the old leather briefcase beside her knee. You should ask your captain. Every eye in the lobby shifted toward Bryce Mercer. Tiny hope. Tiny crack. Bryce opened his mouth slightly. Then Brenda cut across the silence immediately. Enough. Her voice echoed sharp against the tile walls. She is fishing for information. She grabbed the incident report back from the counter before Bryce could look at it longer. You know procedure because you probably spent half your life getting arrested. The words landed ugly enough to make even one civilian near the door uncomfortable. Mayami's jaw tightened once. Barely. Then relaxed again. You really believe uniforms erase character? Nobody answered. Somewhere in the back hallway, a dispatcher stopped typing. The room felt different now. Not supportive of Mayami yet. But no longer completely certain Brenda was right either. Brenda felt that shift and grew more aggressive instantly. Open the briefcase. Craig stepped forward beside her. Yeah. Let us see the little recording device. Tyler looked toward Bryce immediately. Sir. Bryce stayed silent too long. That silence told Mayami more than words would have. The captain already suspected something. Brenda reached for the briefcase handle herself. Fast. Angry. Mayami's hand stopped hers before she touched it. Not violent. Just firm enough to freeze the moment completely. Every officer in the lobby noticed the reflex. Precise. Controlled. Trained. Brenda stared at the hand gripping her wrist. Take your hand off me. Mayami released her immediately. Then stop violating search procedure. Sharp silence exploded across the lobby. Even Craig stopped smiling now. Because that was not civilian language. That was academy language. Captain Bryce finally stepped forward toward the intake counter, eyes locked on the briefcase. Then slowly, for the first time all morning, he looked directly at Mayami Sullivan like he was trying to remember where he had heard that name before. And behind him, the sealed city folder shifted slightly open beneath his arm just enough for Denise to glimpse 4 silver stars embossed across a dark blue shoulder patch inside. Captain Bryce Mercer's eyes stayed locked on the 4 silver stars barely visible inside the half-open city folder. Only 1 second. Maybe 2. Then Brenda Holloway snatched the folder from his hands before anyone else could see clearly. "What is this?" she demanded. Bryce grabbed for it immediately. "That is not your concern." "Wrong answer." Brenda's suspicion sharpened instantly. She looked from the folder to Naomi Sullivan and back again. "You know her." The entire lobby seemed to lean closer without moving. Phones still raised. Officers pretending not to stare while staring anyway. Bryce lowered his voice hard. "Officer Holloway. Step back." Brenda laughed once. "Cold. Now you care about procedure." She slapped the folder onto the intake counter and jabbed a finger toward Naomi. "This woman walks in here acting like she runs the place, quoting policy codes, watching our cameras, carrying a recording device, and suddenly everybody gets nervous." Craig Dawson folded his arms tighter. "Sounds like somebody fishing for lawsuits." Naomi remained still beside the counter. Calm. The old leather briefcase rested near her leg. "You already violated intake procedure twice," she said quietly. Brenda snapped toward her. "You do not give orders here." "I gave observations." "No," Brenda shot back. "You gave attitude." Sharp silence spread again. Denise Whitaker behind the intake glass looked between them nervously. Tyler Grant stood near the hallway entrance pretending to review paperwork while secretly watching every word. Brenda grabbed the unfinished trespass form and shoved it toward Naomi again. "Sign it." "I will not sign a false statement." "Then I arrest you for obstruction." Craig smiled immediately. "There it is." One civilian near the chairs whispered, "Can they do that?" Another answered softly, "They can do whatever they want." That was the real poison inside Ridgemont. Not one slap. Not one cruel officer. The belief that badges erased accountability. Brenda sensed the crowd drifting toward uncertainty again and escalated harder. "Dawson," she barked, "call holding." Craig immediately reached for his radio. "Holding for what charge?" Tyler asked before he could stop himself. Every head turned toward the rookie. Brenda stared at him slowly. "Dangerous." "Excuse me." Tyler swallowed but forced the words out anyway. "Procedure requires charge declaration before detainment." Tiny hope. Tiny resistance. Brenda walked directly toward him. "You questioning me, rookie?" "No, ma'am." "Then shut your mouth before I bury your career in parking enforcement." Tyler went silent instantly. The crowd saw it happen. Saw fear win again. Naomi watched Tyler quietly for one long second before speaking. "Do not punish him for knowing policy." Brenda spun back toward her. "You think this is your academy classroom?" "No," Naomi's voice stayed level. "I think fear has become routine here." That line landed harder than shouting would have. Even Craig looked uncomfortable for half a breath. Brenda recovered by getting louder. "Enough." She pointed toward the security doors leading deeper into the station. "Take the bag." Craig stepped toward the briefcase immediately. This time Naomi moved first. Not aggressive. Precise. She picked up the briefcase and shifted it behind her leg before Craig reached it. Smooth enough to make Bryce Mercer notice again. Trained movement. "You cannot search personal property without authorization," Naomi said calmly. Brenda smirked. "You sure know a lot for somebody sleeping in a motel." Another sting. Another public cut. Phones lifted higher. Somewhere behind the intake desk, Denise quietly whispered, "This is wrong." Bryce heard her. So did Brenda. "Then maybe Denise wants suspension too," Brenda snapped without turning around. Denise froze immediately. Silence swallowed the room again. Craig leaned closer toward Mayami now. What are you hiding in there? Mayami met his eyes. Something you should have respected yesterday. Tiny clue. Tiny fracture. Bryce's attention snapped instantly toward the briefcase again. Brenda noticed that too. Her instincts finally caught up with her anger. Open it, she ordered. Now. Mayami did not move. Brenda stepped closer until they stood inches apart again. You think you are smarter than everybody here? No, Mayami answered softly. I think somebody here already knows the truth. Bryce's jaw tightened visibly. Wrong thing to say in front of Brenda Holloway. Her eyes flashed toward the captain immediately. What truth? Bryce answered too slowly. There is no truth. Brenda looked back at Mayami with growing hostility. You trying to turn command against officers now? She reached for the briefcase again. Faster this time. The loose latch snapped partially open during the struggle. Just enough for something metallic inside to catch the fluorescent lobby lights. Silver edge. Dark blue fabric. Craig saw it first. Tyler saw it second. And Denise quietly covered her mouth behind the intake glass. Brenda slammed the briefcase shut before anyone could see more. That is enough. Her voice cracked slightly now. Tiny fear finally slipping through. She shoved the briefcase hard against Mayami's chest. You are done speaking. Then she turned sharply toward Craig. Get her into interview room 2. Bryce stepped forward instantly. No, the word hit the room hard. Brenda stared at him. Why not? Bryce looked toward the sealed city folder still sitting half open on the counter. Then toward the ceiling camera. Then finally toward Mayami herself. Because, he said carefully, before anybody touches that briefcase. I want camera footage from yesterday pulled first. Silence. Real silence. Craig frowned immediately. Camera 3 was offline. Tyler looked up too fast. Brenda noticed. Her eyes narrowed slowly. Funny, she muttered. Because somebody already knew that before staff did. Then her gaze dropped directly toward Mayami's briefcase again, like she suddenly realized the thing inside might be far more dangerous than a simple recorder. Captain Bryce Mercer's gaze stayed fixed on the leather briefcase like it might explode if opened in the wrong room. Brenda Holloway noticed it immediately. Fear always made people stare too long. What is in there? She demanded again. Mayami Sullivan adjusted the briefcase calmly beside her leg. Evidence. The word landed hard enough to silence the lobby for a full second. Craig Dawson laughed first, too loudly. Evidence of what? Bad fashion choices? A few nervous chuckles followed from nearby officers, but weaker this time. Brenda stepped closer. You think carrying a recorder changes anything? Tiny shift. She said recorder before anyone publicly confirmed it. Tyler Grant caught that instantly. So did Denise behind intake. Brenda realized too late what she had admitted. You already knew there was a recording? Mayami asked quietly. Brenda pointed at the cracked latch aggressively. Anybody could see the damn light. Interesting, Mayami replied. Because yesterday you said you never noticed the briefcase at all. Sharp silence cracked across the room. Craig's grin flickered. Bryce looked down immediately toward Brenda's incomplete report still sitting on the intake counter. The report really did say she never observed personal belongings. Denise slowly stopped typing. Brenda felt control slipping and slammed her palm against the counter. Enough word games. She pointed toward Tyler. Get the evidence bag. Tyler hesitated. Ma'am, now. He moved reluctantly toward the storage cabinet while civilians watched openly now instead of pretending not to. The atmosphere inside the lobby had changed. Not trust. Not support. Suspicion. Tiny dangerous suspicion. Mayami slowly placed the briefcase on the granite counter herself before anyone touched her again. Careful with the latch, she said softly. The recorder inside is still active. Brenda froze for half a heartbeat. Bryce's eyes snapped upward instantly. Craig stopped smiling completely. Still active? Denise whispered behind the glass. Tiny hope. Tiny crack. Brenda recovered fast. Good, she barked. Then it recorded you trespassing too. She reached for the briefcase aggressively and yanked it open before Bryce could stop her. Inside sat the small digital recorder wrapped beside paperwork and dark blue fabric. The red light blinked steadily beneath the fluorescent lobby lights. Evidence. Real evidence. Brenda grabbed the recorder immediately. Cheap little toy. But her voice had changed. Less certain now. Bryce stepped forward sharply. Do not erase anything. Brenda laughed without humor. What, you think IA cares about lobby drama? Then something else slid partially free beneath the recorder when she jerked it upward too fast. A folded paper stamped with the Ridgemont City seal. Craig caught only part of the wording before Brenda shoved it back down again. Appointment authorization. Her hand slammed the briefcase shut instantly. Too late. Tyler saw it. Denise saw it. Bryce definitely saw it. Brenda looked around the room and realized other people had noticed her panic. Meaningless paperwork, she snapped. Probably fake. Mayami's eyes stayed on the recorder still clutched in Brenda's hand. You should not tamper with active evidence. Evidence? Brenda barked. You are not law enforcement. Another dangerous silence followed that sentence. Bryce looked at Mayami harder this time. Long enough to make Brenda notice again. Captain, she said sharply, why are you looking at her like that? Bryce did not answer immediately. His phone suddenly buzzed inside his jacket pocket. City Council office flashed across the screen. Everyone near enough saw it. Brenda's confidence cracked slightly again. Bryce ignored the call. That frightened her more. Play it, Denise whispered softly before she could stop herself. Brenda turned instantly. Excuse me. Denise swallowed hard but kept her eyes on the recorder. If it is fake, then play it. Tiny courage. Tiny rebellion. The lobby held its breath. Brenda stared at the young clerk like she wanted to destroy her career on the spot. You work intake, she hissed. Not investigations. And you skipped procedure, Mayami said quietly. Brenda spun back around. You do not get to lecture officers. Then stop acting like evidence scares you. That one landed. Hard. Phones lifted higher again. Civilians leaned closer. Even Craig looked uncertain now. What do you think Brenda Holloway is really afraid the recorder captured? Brenda jabbed the stop button on the device immediately without playing it. Obstacle. Control seized back. This recording proves nothing, she snapped. Audio can be edited. Bryce finally stepped forward and extended his hand toward the recorder. Give it to me. Brenda tightened her grip instead. Why? Because chain of custody matters. Another procedural phrase. Another clue. Brenda's eyes narrowed slowly. Funny, she muttered. Everybody suddenly cares about procedure around her. Her gaze dropped toward Mayami again. Who exactly are you? Mayami did not answer. Instead she looked quietly toward the security monitor station near the hallway. Camera 3 flickered alive for half a second. Just one frame. One frozen image. Brenda's arm raised. Mayami's face turning sideways from impact. Then the screen glitched black again. Nobody in the lobby breathed. Tyler stared at the monitor in shock. Denise covered her mouth. Craig whispered, I thought that camera was dead. Brenda slowly turned toward the screen, face draining pale for the first time all morning. Then Captain Bryce's phone rang again. Louder this time. He finally looked down at it. And when the caller ID lit across the screen, his expression changed completely. City Council President Holden Price. Captain Bryce Mercer stared at the incoming call from City Council President Holden Price like the phone itself carried a loaded weapon. The precinct lobby remained frozen around him. Brenda Holloway still clutched the recorder too tightly in one hand. Craig Dawson kept glancing nervously between the dead security monitor and the leather briefcase sitting open on the counter. Nobody spoke until the phone stopped ringing. Then it rang again immediately. Bryce answered this time. Mercer. Silence swallowed the lobby while he listened. His face drained slower with every passing second. Yes, sir, he finally said quietly. She is here. Brenda's head snapped toward him instantly. She took one step closer. Who? Bryce did not answer. He only turned slightly away from the room and lowered his voice further. No, sir. Nothing official has happened. Mayami watched him carefully without moving. Her hand rested lightly near the open briefcase. Beside the recorder, the folded city paperwork remained partially visible beneath dark blue fabric. 4 silver stars hidden just out of full sight. Tiny clues scattered like broken glass nobody wanted to touch yet. Brenda ended the call herself by slamming the disconnect button on Bryce's desk phone the moment he lowered it. What the hell is going on? She demanded. Bryce looked furious for half a second. Then cautious again. Give me the recorder. No, Brenda's answer came instantly. Not until I know what game this woman is playing. Mayami spoke quietly. It is not a game when people get hurt. The words landed differently this time. Less defensive. More personal. Brenda scoffed loudly. Oh please. You got slapped, not shot. Tiny cruelty. Casual cruelty. The kind that came from years of believing some pain mattered less than others. Mayami's eyes lowered briefly toward the old photograph still tucked inside the briefcase beneath the recorder. Harold Sullivan standing beside a patrol car 30 years earlier. Proud smile. Honest eyes. Brenda noticed the movement. What is that? She reached toward the photo, but Mayami closed the briefcase before she could touch it. Too late. Bryce had already seen the name printed across the faded frame. Sullivan. His expression shifted slightly. Like memory brushing against something old and uncomfortable. You knew Harold Sullivan? He asked before thinking. Silence crashed across the room. Brenda frowned immediately. Who? Bryce did not answer her. His eyes stayed on Mayami. I remember that badge. Tiny clue. Tiny fracture opening wider. Craig looked confused now. The whistleblower guy. Denise Whitaker slowly looked up from behind intake. My uncle talked about him, she whispered. Said nobody protected him. Brenda rolled her eyes instantly. Great. Now we are doing sob stories. But Mayami's face changed for the first time all morning. Not anger. Grief. Controlled. Buried deep. He reported brutality inside this precinct, she said quietly. 3 months later his tires were slashed, his reports disappeared, and nobody stood beside him at the funeral except my mother. The lobby went silent again. Even civilians stopped recording for a moment. Brenda crossed her arms harder. And what does that have to do with today? Mayami looked directly at her. Everything. Another heavy silence followed. Somewhere deeper in the building, an old printer hummed to life. Radios crackled faintly from patrol desks. Life continued around the lobby while something inside the room slowly shifted direction. Bryce rubbed one hand across his jaw. Harold Sullivan filed complaints against officers tied to excessive force investigations. Brenda's voice sharpened immediately. Complaints that were cleared. Some files disappeared, Bryce admitted quietly. Craig frowned now. Wait, you think this woman is connected to that? Naomi did not answer. Instead she reopened the briefcase slowly and removed a small worn notebook bound in cracked black leather. She placed it gently on the counter. My father kept notes, she said. Badge numbers. Dates. Missing reports. Brenda laughed too fast. Anybody can fake notes. But Bryce leaned closer immediately after seeing one page. His eyes narrowed. That signature, Denise whispered, that is retired Lieutenant Brogan. Tyler Grant stepped nearer from the hallway. Brogan trained Holloway. Brenda spun around instantly. Enough. Her voice echoed hard through the precinct. You do not drag dead officers into conspiracy garbage. She snatched the notebook off the counter before Bryce could touch it. This proves nothing. But her fingers tightened too hard around the edges. Fear again. Real fear now. Naomi watched her carefully. You recognized the handwriting very quickly. Brenda's face hardened. I recognize lies. Tiny hope surfaced when Bryce finally stepped between them instead of beside Brenda. Nobody touches that notebook again until Records reviews it. But the hope died almost immediately when Craig's radio crackled sharply. Dawson, report to Records. Somebody locked archive access from an external terminal. Brenda froze. Bryce looked up sharply. What archive? Static crackled again. Then the dispatcher answered. Old internal affairs files connected to Officer Harold Sullivan. Silence hit harder than the slap ever did. Brenda slowly turned toward Naomi. What did you do? Naomi's expression never changed. I protected evidence before I walked through your doors. The words settled deep into the room. Then Tyler's phone vibrated quietly in his pocket. He glanced down and went pale. Denise noticed immediately. What? Tyler swallowed hard. Someone just sent me an old precinct photo. He looked slowly toward Naomi. She was here before. She was here before. Tyler Grant's words hung inside the precinct lobby like smoke nobody could clear away. Every officer turned toward him at once. Brenda Holloway stepped forward immediately. What did you just say? Tyler swallowed hard, phone still shaking slightly in his hand. The old photo. The one somebody sent me. Brenda snatched the phone from him before he could react. The image filled the screen instantly. 20 years old. Ridgemont Police Youth Outreach Day. Officers lined outside the precinct entrance beside local children. Brenda scanned it once, then scoffed loudly. This proves nothing. But her voice sounded tighter now. Captain Bryce Mercer moved closer anyway. So did Denise behind intake. Near the bottom corner of the faded photo stood a young black girl beside Officer Harold Sullivan. Same eyes. Same calm expression. Brenda locked the phone screen immediately before anyone could stare too long. Enough distractions. She shoved the device back into Tyler's chest. You people really think old photos erase criminal behavior? Naomi Sullivan stayed silent near the counter, briefcase still beside her leg. Brenda pointed directly at her. This woman entered a secured police facility carrying hidden recording equipment, manipulated officers, accessed confidential knowledge, and interfered with active operations. Craig Dawson folded his arms again, confidence returning now that Brenda had seized the room back. Sounds like impersonation to me. Several officers nodded reluctantly. The uniforms mattered again. The badges mattered again. Truth became smaller whenever authority spoke loudly enough. Bryce looked uncertain, but uncertainty was not courage. Brenda sensed it instantly and pushed harder. Captain, with respect, you either support your officers or you support whatever this is. She gestured toward Mayami like she was pointing at garbage left in the hallway. I want her removed from the building. A civilian near the waiting chairs quietly muttered, she should just leave. Another answered, cops know what they are doing. False victory spreading. Slow. Poisonous. Mayami finally spoke. You still have not played the recording. Brenda smiled coldly. Because fake evidence does not deserve attention. Then why are you afraid of it? Tiny silence. Tiny crack. Craig jumped in fast. Nobody is afraid of some cheap recorder. But Bryce's eyes drifted toward it anyway. Denise noticed. Tyler noticed. Brenda noticed too. She slammed the recorder onto the counter hard enough to startle the civilians nearby. Fine. She pointed toward the security monitor station. Pull the lobby feed. Right now. Tyler hesitated. Camera 3 is unstable. Then pull another angle. The backup hallway feed is missing 37 seconds. The room shifted slightly again. Brenda snapped around. Missing? Tyler nodded nervously. The file jumps. Mayami's eyes lifted toward the monitors without surprise. Convenient timing. Brenda pointed at her instantly. There. You hear that? She already knew footage was damaged. Craig nodded aggressively. Because she tampered with it. False accusation. Public confidence. Several civilians started murmuring agreement now. Phones lifted higher. Denise opened her mouth once like she wanted to speak, then closed it again when Brenda glanced her way. Fear won another round. Bryce finally stepped toward the monitor station himself. Tiny hope. He typed something into the archive system. The screen flashed red immediately. Access restricted, command authorization required. Bryce frowned. Who locked the archive? No answer came. Brenda moved quickly before suspicion could grow. Exactly. Somebody hacked precinct systems. She pointed toward Mayami again. This woman walks in carrying hidden devices and suddenly evidence disappears. Craig laughed harshly. Real subtle. The pressure inside the lobby thickened. Officers started believing the easier story again. Dangerous outsider. Disruptive woman. Fake victim. Brenda grabbed the old notebook tied to Harold Sullivan's case and shoved it into an evidence envelope herself. These records are now under police hold. Mayami stepped forward one pace. You cannot bury evidence twice. The words landed directly on Bryce Mercer. His face tightened instantly. Brenda heard it too. Twice, she repeated slowly. You really have been planning this. Then she raised her voice loud enough for the whole precinct to hear. Everybody listen carefully. This woman is attempting to intimidate officers using fabricated misconduct claims connected to a dead cop. Craig pointed toward the entrance. She wants headlines. That is all. Several officers nodded now. The crowd tilted back toward the uniforms. Toward the people with badges and guns and authority. Mayami remained calm even as the room turned colder around her again. Truth survives longer than fear, she said quietly. Brenda smirked. Not in this building. Then she looked toward Bryce. Final call, Captain. Her or us? Silence swallowed the lobby. Bryce looked trapped between the city folder, the recorder, the missing footage, and the officers staring at him waiting for loyalty. Finally he spoke without meeting Mayami's eyes. Escort her to interview room 2 until records verifies the materials. False victory complete. Craig moved immediately toward Mayami's side. Tyler looked sick. Denise lowered her head behind the glass. Brenda smiled openly now, enjoying the moment. See, she whispered near Mayami's ear. Nobody important believes you. Then her smile flickered for just 1 second when the archive monitor behind Bryce suddenly flashed another warning across the screen. External file recovery in progress. Beneath the message, a single file name appeared before the system glitched again. Sullivan_H intake_CM_raw. The archive monitor kept flashing the same warning over and over. File recovery in progress. Every few seconds the screen glitched black again before the text returned. Brenda Holloway stared at it with growing panic she could no longer fully hide. Then she snapped back into command mode fast enough to fool most of the room. Escort her now. Craig Dawson grabbed Naomi Sullivan by the arm harder this time. Not casual anymore. Public. Aggressive. You heard the captain. Civilians near the waiting chairs pulled out phones again immediately. Some recorded openly now. Others looked away. Nobody stepped in. Nobody ever stepped in when uniforms decided somebody was guilty. Naomi winced slightly but kept her posture straight. The red mark from Brenda's slap still burned faintly against her cheek beneath the lobby lights. Careful, she said quietly. You are already being recorded. Craig leaned close enough for only nearby officers to hear. Not for long. Brenda pointed toward the open briefcase immediately. Bag everything. Tyler hesitated again. Ma'am, chain of custody says, I know procedure better than a rookie, Brenda snapped. Do your job. Tyler swallowed hard and slowly reached for the briefcase. Inside, the recorder still blinked red. The old notebook rested beneath folded city documents. One corner of dark blue uniform fabric remained visible. Denise noticed it again. So did Bryce Mercer. 4 silver stars hidden beneath the fold. Tiny clue. Dangerous clue. Brenda caught Bryce staring and slammed the briefcase shut herself. Nobody touches this until internal affairs clears it. False victory tightening around the room. Craig started pulling Naomi toward the hallway leading to interview room 2. Move. She stumbled once but regained balance immediately. Dignity intact. A civilian woman near the chairs whispered softly, this feels wrong. Her husband answered under his breath, do not get involved with cops. Silence swallowed the lobby again. Fear always won faster than truth. Then Tyler's monitor suddenly chimed loudly behind the intake desk. Everybody turned instinctively. One frame loaded onto the archive screen before freezing. Camera 3. Lobby angle. Brenda's raised arm. Naomi standing still. No aggression. No threat. Just impact. The room went dead quiet for half a heartbeat. Tiny hope. Bryce stepped toward the monitor immediately. Freeze that frame. Brenda moved faster. She yanked the cable from the terminal so hard sparks snapped behind the screen. Blackness swallowed the image instantly. System corruption, she barked before anybody could speak. Nobody uses damaged footage. Denise stared at her in disbelief now. Tyler looked sick again. Craig tightened his grip harder on Naomi's arm. You are done, he muttered. Brenda pointed toward the civilians next. Phones away. This is an active investigation. Most obeyed immediately. Authority always sounded like truth inside buildings built on fear. Naomi finally spoke louder this time. Calm. Controlled. You are destroying evidence in front of witnesses. Brenda laughed coldly. Witnesses? She gestured around the lobby. All these people saw a trespasser provoke officers. Craig smirked again. You should have stayed outside. Another emotional spike hit when Brenda stepped directly in front of Naomi one more time. Listen carefully, she whispered harshly. Nobody important is coming for you. Naomi held her gaze without blinking. That is what they told my father too. Brenda's jaw tightened instantly. Craig shoved Naomi forward again toward the hallway. Enough. Bryce opened his mouth slightly like he might finally intervene. Tiny hope again. Then Brenda cut him off sharply. Captain, if you cannot control this scene, I will report that too. Fear crossed Bryce's face. Not fear of Miami. Fear of the institution itself. He stepped back. Hope died again. Craig dragged Miami toward the interview corridor while officers watched silently from nearby desks. Some looked uncomfortable. None moved. Tyler suddenly called out from intake before he could stop himself. Wait. The hallway froze. Brenda turned slowly. What now? Tyler looked pale, holding a printed archive receipt in trembling hands. The recovery file, it already auto-exported before the monitor crashed. Brenda walked toward him immediately. Give it to me. Tyler hesitated. One dangerous second. Then Craig shoved Miami harder toward the hallway wall. Kid, do not be stupid. Tyler's hand shook badly now. Brenda ripped the receipt from him anyway. Her face changed instantly after reading the top line. Bryce noticed. What is it? Brenda folded the paper immediately. Nothing. But Tyler had already seen enough. So had Denise. Original upload source, City Council Secure Server. The room shifted again. Brenda recovered fast. Too fast. Interview room 2. Now. Craig forced Miami through the hallway doors at last. The heavy metal doors slammed behind them. Final humiliation. Isolation. Brenda stood in the lobby gripping the evidence receipt so tightly it crumpled in her fist. Then the precinct intercom suddenly crackled alive overhead. Static. Silence. And finally one sharp voice echoed through every hallway in the building. Nobody moves, Officer Sullivan, until I arrive. The entire precinct froze after the voice thundered through the intercom. Nobody moves, Officer Sullivan, until I arrive. Silence swallowed every hallway. Craig Dawson's grip loosened from Miami's arm without him realizing it. Brenda Holloway recovered first. Who authorized the intercom? She snapped. Nobody answered. Even the radios had gone strangely quiet. Captain Bryce Mercer stared toward the ceiling speakers like he recognized the voice but wished he did not. Then the front entrance doors opened hard enough to echo across the marble lobby. City Council President Holden Price stepped inside surrounded by 2 legal aides and a gray-haired woman carrying a sealed archive box against her chest. Every officer in the room straightened automatically. Power had entered the building. Phones lowered slowly among the civilians. Whispers died. Brenda forced a smile instantly. President Price, thank God. This woman has been interfering with police operations all morning. Holden did not even look at her first. His eyes locked directly onto Miami Sullivan standing beside the interview hallway doors. Then he noticed the fading handprint still visible across her cheek. His jaw tightened visibly. Who touched her? Nobody answered. Brenda tried again. Sir, we are handling an unstable trespass situation involving falsified evidence and, stop talking. The words landed cold enough to empty the room of sound. Brenda blinked hard. Craig stepped backward instinctively. The gray-haired woman beside Holden moved toward the intake desk slowly and placed the archive box beside Tyler Grant's terminal. Old evidence labels covered the sides. Internal Affairs. Ridgemont Precinct. Harold Sullivan. Tiny clues now sitting openly under fluorescent lights where everybody could see them. Denise whispered softly behind intake, "Oh my God." Bryce stepped forward carefully. Mr. President, there are unresolved procedural concerns. Holden looked at him sharply. Then resolve them honestly. Another silence. Another crack spreading through the room. Brenda pointed toward the sealed box aggressively. Those files were restricted. The gray-haired woman answered before Halden could. Not anymore. She slid official release papers across the counter. City seals stamped every page. Bryce picked one up slowly. His eyes widened slightly while reading. Brenda saw it immediately. Fear returned harder this time. "What is that?" she demanded. Bryce did not answer right away. He kept reading. Tyler's archive monitor suddenly flickered alive beside him again. Access granted flashed green across the screen. Camera files began restoring automatically one by one. Craig stared at the loading bar in horror. Tiny hope spread visibly now. Civilians lifted phones again, but carefully this time. Not mocking anymore. Watching. Waiting. Miami remained completely still through all of it. Halden finally turned toward her. "Are you injured?" "I am standing," she answered quietly. Brenda laughed nervously. "This is insane. You are all acting like she is somebody important." Halden's expression darkened instantly. "Everybody who walks through these doors is important." The sentence hit the lobby like a hammer. Even Craig lowered his eyes for a second. Then Brenda made her final push for control. "Sir, with respect, this woman illegally recorded officers and manipulated evidence tied to a dead investigation." "Dead?" the gray-haired woman repeated sharply. She opened the archive box herself. Inside sat old case folders, disciplinary requests, witness statements, and a sealed cassette tape marked H. Sullivan intake complaint. The room began changing shape emotionally. Officers who had laughed earlier now looked uneasy. Denise stepped slowly out from behind intake for the first time all morning. Tyler stared openly at the files. Bryce looked trapped between shame and procedure. Brenda pointed toward Miami again. "She planned this." Miami finally answered with more weight than before. "No. I prepared for people like you." Silence again. Heavy now. Dangerous. "If the truth fully opens, who inside this precinct do you think will panic first?" The loading bar on Tyler's monitor hit 73%. One restored video thumbnail appeared clearly this time. "Lobby intake cam, 8:14 a.m. Brenda noticed and lunged toward the keyboard immediately. "Turn that off." Tyler blocked her hand before he even realized he moved. Tiny courage. Tiny rebellion again. Brenda stared at him in disbelief. "You are making a career-ending mistake." "Maybe," Tyler whispered. "Maybe not." Craig stepped toward the monitor too. "Captain, stop this." Bryce did not move. Halden slowly picked up the old cassette tape from the archive box and held it toward the room. "This recording disappeared 20 years ago," he said quietly. "Funny thing about buried evidence." He looked directly at Brenda. "Sometimes it survives longer than the people hiding it." Brenda's breathing changed now. Faster. Uneven. The room felt it. Everybody felt it. Then the monitor chimed sharply. "Video recovery complete." Camera 3 footage appeared frozen on screen. Brenda's raised hand inches from Miami's face. Tyler's cursor hovered over the play button. Nobody breathed. Halden looked slowly across the silent lobby and said one final sentence. "Before you judge her, watch this." Tyler Grant pressed play. The restored lobby footage filled the monitor in sharp silence. Every phone in the precinct lowered slowly as the video rolled. Miami Sullivan appeared entering through the front doors carrying only her leather briefcase. Calm. Respectful. Unarmed. Brenda Holloway's voice exploded through the speakers seconds later. "Get your filthy hands off that door." The room flinched hearing it played back publicly. The footage continued. Brenda stepping closer. Craig laughing beside her. "Trash like you has no rights in my station." A sharp intake of breath spread through the civilians listening now. Then came the slap. Loud. Clear. Impossible to deny. Brenda's hand cracked across Miami's face while the timestamp blinked above the screen. Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. The silence inside the precinct became physical. Craig whispered first. The audio is edited. Holden Price turned toward him slowly. The timestamp syncs with dispatch records. Another blow. Another denial crushed instantly. Bryce Mercer stared down at the floor. Denise covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Tyler looked sick. Brenda tried again, voice cracking now. She provoked officers. By opening a door. Holden asked coldly. The room turned colder around Brenda immediately. Then Tyler clicked the next recovered file. Camera 4. Hallway angle. Brenda's voice again. Nobody important is coming for you. Craig's laugh followed. She should have stayed outside. Tiny pieces of cruelty now hanging in the air for everyone to hear. Officers in the back slowly stepped away from Brenda and Craig without realizing they were doing it. Distance. Survival instinct. Miami remained silent through all of it. Dignified. Still. Then the gray-haired archivist opened the old evidence box completely and removed Harold Sullivan's original complaint file. This report vanished 20 years ago, she said quietly. Until this morning. She laid the pages across the counter one by one. Badge numbers. Witness statements. Use of force complaints tied to Ridgemont officers. Several signatures matched names still employed inside the building. Bryce went pale reading them. Brenda pointed wildly toward the files. Those accusations were never proven. The archivist slid one final page onto the counter. Signed disciplinary recommendation, chief review pending. The signature line carried one name clearly. Acting Captain Bryce Mercer. The room shifted violently toward him. Bryce looked devastated. I filed it, he admitted softly. Then the case disappeared. Brenda stared at him in shock. You knew about this? I tried to report it. His voice broke slightly. Nobody listened. Another silence crashed through the lobby. Then Holden Price finally turned fully toward Miami Sullivan. You may show them the rest now. Miami slowly opened the briefcase herself. No rushing. No triumph. She removed the folded dark blue uniform carefully and laid it across the intake counter beneath the fluorescent lights. 4 silver stars gleamed against the fabric. Gasps rippled openly through the precinct. Denise stepped backward. Craig's face drained completely white. Brenda whispered, no, then Miami placed a polished badge beside the uniform. Chief of Police, Ridgemont Metropolitan. Her name engraved beneath it. Chief Miami Sullivan. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. The power inside the room reversed in a single silent wave. Tyler stood frozen. Denise's eyes filled instantly. Even Bryce straightened instinctively. Holden spoke clearly enough for every officer to hear. By unanimous city council vote effective this morning, Miami Sullivan became the new chief of Ridgemont Police. Phones lowered completely now. No more whispers. No more laughter. Brenda staggered backward one step. No, she never identified herself. Miami finally looked directly at her again. Calm. Steady. You never asked. Emotional shock hit harder than the reveal itself. Craig tried one final desperate move. This was a setup. No, Miami answered softly. This was a test. Then she lifted the old photograph of Harold Sullivan beside the patrol car and placed it next to her badge. My father walked into this precinct asking for dignity. He left in an ambulance. Complete silence swallowed the building. Brenda's breathing turned uneven now. You plan to destroy us. No, Mayami said. You destroyed yourselves the moment you believed power mattered more than people. The final blow landed when Holden Price opened the sealed appointment folder and slid it toward Bryce Mercer. Inside sat Mayami's official command authorization signed 3 days earlier. Bryce looked at Brenda slowly. You assaulted your commanding officer. Brenda's knees nearly gave out. Craig stopped speaking entirely. Then the archive monitor chimed one last time. Additional disciplinary files began restoring automatically onto the screen. Names. Dates. Complaints. Suspensions buried years earlier. The whole room stared at Brenda and Craig now like strangers seeing them clearly for the first time. And then Mayami noticed something that changed her expression completely. One complaint file carried a handwritten note at the bottom in red ink. Reporting officer threatened after Holloway interview. She looked slowly toward Brenda. You knew exactly who my father was before you slapped me. The precinct stayed silent long after Mayami Sullivan spoke the words. You knew exactly who my father was before you slapped me. Brenda Holloway opened her mouth once, then closed it again when nobody around her rushed to defend her anymore. Not Craig. Not the officers near the hallway. Not even Captain Bryce Mercer. The power had shifted completely now. Holden Price stepped beside the intake counter and looked directly at Brenda. Officer Holloway, remove your badge. Brenda stared at him in disbelief. You cannot suspend me over one misunderstanding. This was not a misunderstanding, Holden answered coldly. This was abuse of authority captured on video, destruction of evidence, obstruction of an investigation, and conduct unbecoming of an officer. Every word landed like another door shutting. Craig Dawson tried speaking next. Sir, we were protecting the precinct. From what? Denise Whitaker asked quietly from behind intake. A woman opening a door. Craig looked away instantly. The civilians near the waiting area lowered their phones now. No excitement left. Only shame. Brenda slowly unclipped her badge from her uniform with trembling fingers. The metallic click echoed loudly through the lobby. She placed it onto the counter beside Mayami's new chief badge. One dull. One polished. One ending. One beginning. Emotional silence swallowed the room again. Bryce finally stepped forward and removed Craig's badge next himself. Craig's face hardened. You are throwing us away to save yourselves. Bryce looked exhausted. No. We already lost ourselves a long time ago. Another hard silence followed. The gray-haired archivist opened another recovered file from the evidence box and slid it toward Holden. There are 6 additional complaints tied to Holloway and Dawson, she said quietly. 3 disappeared after intake review. Tyler stared at the documents in shock. Denise shook her head slowly. People tried to report this for years. Brenda's composure finally cracked completely. You think this precinct survives without officers willing to get rough? Several officers physically stepped farther away from her after that sentence. Nobody wanted ownership of her words anymore. Mayami remained calm through all of it. No smile. No revenge in her eyes. Only sadness. My father believed this badge meant protection, she said softly while touching the old photograph beside her new badge. That belief buried him. The room lowered its eyes. Holden turned toward the gathered officers next. Effective immediately, Officer Brenda Holloway and Officer Craig Dawson are suspended pending criminal assault and internal affairs investigations. Craig swore under his breath. Brenda whispered desperately, Holden, please. I have served this city for 18 years. Then you should have known better for 18 years, Holden answered. Final consequence. Final collapse. 2 uniformed internal affairs investigators entered quietly through the front doors moments later carrying sealed evidence cases. Nobody laughed anymore. Nobody whispered. Even the fluorescent buzz overhead seemed softer now. One investigator collected the recorder carefully. Another photographed the red mark still faintly visible on Mayami's cheek. Brenda looked at Mayami one last time. "You humiliated us." Mayami shook her head gently. "You humiliated yourselves in front of people who trusted you." That sentence ended whatever defense remained. Bryce Mercer finally picked up Harold Sullivan's recovered complaint file himself. Slowly. Respectfully. "This report will be restored permanently into department records," he announced to the room. "No more erased names." Tyler looked visibly relieved hearing it. Denise wiped tears from her eyes quietly. One civilian woman near the waiting chairs whispered, "About time." Then something small but powerful happened. A young patrol officer stepped toward Mayami carefully and held out the old notebook recovered from the evidence envelope earlier. "Chief," he said softly for the first time. "I think this belongs with you." The word changed the room again. "Chief." No sarcasm. No doubt. Real respect. Mayami accepted the notebook gently. Her fingers brushed across the cracked leather cover her father once carried through these same halls. The emotional weight nearly broke Bryce's composure watching it. Holden looked toward the officers gathered throughout the lobby. "Every citizen who walks into this building will be treated with dignity from this day forward. Not because they might hold power. Because they are human beings." No one argued. No one even breathed loudly enough to interrupt him. Then Bryce turned toward Mayami carefully. "Chief Sullivan, your office is ready upstairs." Tiny emotional shift. Not victory. Responsibility. Healing had not happened yet. The wound still lived inside these walls. Mayami looked once more at the old photograph of her father standing proudly outside this same precinct decades earlier. Then she lifted her recovered badge from the counter at last. The same doors that once forced her out now stood open in complete silence waiting for her to walk back through them. The elevator doors opened slowly onto the top floor of Ridgemont Precinct just after sunrise. Warm morning light stretched across polished hallway floors that had once felt forbidden to Mayami Sullivan. Now officers stepped aside quietly when she passed. Not from fear. Respect. Real respect. Chief Mayami Sullivan carried only 3 things in her hands. Her restored badge. Her father's worn black notebook. And the faded photograph taken outside the precinct decades earlier. The same building that once buried his voice had finally spoken his name again. Behind her, Captain Bryce Mercer stopped near the office doorway. "The plaque outside has already been changed," he said softly. Mayami looked up. Chief Mayami Sullivan gleamed beneath the morning light. Emotional silence settled between them. Bryce lowered his eyes briefly. "I should have fought harder for your father." Mayami answered gently. "Then fight harder for the next person." No anger. No victory speech. Just truth. Downstairs, the lobby already felt different. The intake desk now displayed a new sign installed before dawn. "Every person who enters this building will be treated with dignity." Denise Whitaker carefully taped it into place herself while Tyler Grant adjusted the crooked corner. Civilians entering the station paused to read it. Some smiled quietly. Some looked surprised. One elderly homeless man stepped uncertainly through the front doors carrying a torn grocery bag against his chest. Yesterday officers would have ignored him. Today Tyler walked forward first. "Sir," he said kindly, "how can we help you?" The old man blinked in confusion before slowly smiling back. Small moment. Huge change. Upstairs, Mayami opened the office door that once belonged to men who ignored her father's warnings. The room smelled faintly of old paper and coffee. A single cardboard box waited on the desk. Inside sat Harold Sullivan's restored badge, polished carefully overnight by evidence staff. Beside it rested the original complaint file once marked missing for 20 years. Restored name. Restored dignity. Mayami touched the badge gently with trembling fingers. For the first time all morning, emotion nearly broke through her calm expression. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Denise stepped into the doorway holding the repaired recorder from the lobby incident. Evidence finished processing it, she said carefully. I thought you should keep it. Mayami accepted the recorder slowly. The same object once used to expose cruelty now rested safely in her hands like proof that truth survived after all. Denise hesitated another second. Chief, thank you for not becoming cruel back. Mayami looked at her warmly. Pain does not earn permission to destroy people. Another quiet silence followed. Downstairs, internal affairs officers escorted Brenda Holloway and Craig Dawson through the rear exit away from cameras and civilians. No public humiliation. No revenge parade. Just consequence. Brenda glanced once toward the lobby sign before disappearing through the doors. Nobody cheered. Nobody laughed. Some officers simply lowered their eyes. Healing mattered more than revenge now. Later that afternoon, Mayami stood in the precinct training room facing every officer in the department. Harold Sullivan's old notebook rested beside her on the podium. The faded photograph stood framed nearby under soft light. This department will change, she said calmly. Not because I was insulted. Because too many people before me were. Nobody interrupted her. Nobody looked away. She continued quietly. If somebody walks through those doors wearing old clothes, speaking broken English, carrying fear instead of money, you treat them with dignity anyway. Tyler nodded first. Denise after him. Then others followed. One by one. The room slowly becoming something better than it had been yesterday. Before leaving the podium, Mayami opened her father's notebook one final time. On the last page, written in faded blue ink, sat a single sentence. If they ever listen, teach them to protect people first. Her eyes lingered there for a long moment. Then she closed the notebook gently and smiled for the first time in the entire building. That evening, as the sun dropped low across Ridgemont, a little black girl stepped nervously through the precinct doors holding her mother's hand. She stared wide-eyed at the officers inside. Fear lived there already. Mayami noticed immediately from across the lobby. She walked toward the child slowly, knelt to her eye level, and held the door open wider. You are safe here, she said softly. The little girl smiled. And for the first time in 20 years, the walls of Ridgemont Precinct finally sounded like they deserved to wear the badge hanging above the door.